had an experience at my home in Foster, Rhode Island that I feel is related to the stories you share. I'm going to keep my name out because a lot of people know me in this community and I would rather they keep thinking of me the way they always have. But what happened changed my life in a very positive way. I live by myself in the same house my husband and I shared for 38 years. He passed away 6 years ago, but my sister lives here and I see my kids and my grandkids often, so I'm not lonely in that way. We have a lot of property, and over the years, my husband and I established quite the garden space that some people might even call a small farm. Working in our garden has always been a big part of my life, but it became the central point after he was gone. I grow much more food than I can use and love sharing it with my neighbors and family. On a completely ordinary night, I went to my room with a cup of chamomile tea and a book like I usually do before going to sleep. Somewhere in my reading, I must have fallen asleep because I was startled awake by someone's voice outside my bedroom window. Just outside, there are rows of raised garden beds that sit against the house, and it sounded like that's where it was coming from. I got out of bed and went over to the window, then heard the voice again, and it clearly said my name. There should never be anyone out there, but what really shocked me was that the voice sounded like my husband calling me. It was exactly the same actually, and I hadn't heard his voice in years. I don't know how lucid I was since I had just woken up, but I put my slippers on and walked down the hallway toward our dining room where I could get a clear view of the back through the patio doors. About halfway down the hall, my entire house filled with light, and I can't describe how bright it was. It was overflowing into every room and it stopped me in my tracks. I wasn't even near a window and it still lit up everything around me. This only lasted a few seconds, then it went away and got dark again. I kept going to the end of the hall where I could lean around the corner, and when I looked out the back doors, there was a man standing on our patio with the garden hose, casually watering the flower beds. I couldn't see his face because he was turned the other way, but the shape of him was a spitting image of my husband. Even his posture was the same, and he used to stand there and water those same beds all the time. As strange and possibly as scary as that might sound, I walked right up to the sliding glass door and looked at him. I was in total disbelief that he was standing 10 feet away from me and consciously telling myself it wasn't possible. Then I lifted the piece of dowling out of the track that I use as my security system, opened the door and said his name. When he turned around and faced me, it was definitely him, but oddly enough, I didn't run over to put my arms around him or anything, which I still think is weird. Instead, I went out on the patio without saying a word, and when we got close, all he said was, "Let's take a walk through the garden," and then we started walking together. He did most of the talking, but it wasn't like any conversation we'd ever had in real life. He kept pointing specific things out to me, like our tomato plants and the soil they were growing in, and a big rock that had been in our yard for years. Each time he pointed to something around us, he would tell me I was connected to it. One that I really remember was the raised beds. He took my hand and put it on the wood and told me I was literally connected to the cedar trees they were made from, as in we were two parts of the same thing and all from the same place. When he said that, I could feel it physically. I don't know how to explain it really, but just hearing the words "you are part of this" made me feel what it was like to be that thing for just a moment. It was the strangest thing, but in a very calm and certain way, like he was reminding me of a simple fact that I had forgotten. After making a loop around the inner part of our garden, we got back to the door and he told me I should go to bed. I don't understand why, but I didn't question that. I just walked in the house and didn't even say goodbye. Something changed when I turned around to lock the door though. I saw him walking away toward our greenhouse, but it didn't look like my husband anymore. The shape of the body was completely different and much taller than he was by at least a foot. Then it dawned on me that what I was looking at was not my husband and it wasn't a person. It was exactly what people describe as an alien, like the kind you see in movies or on TV. It had to be in the mid 6-foot range and its body looked fit and slim, especially up into the shoulders. It also had a larger head, but not disproportionate to its body. It never turned around again, so I only saw it from behind, but I am positive this is what I saw. I realized while I was standing there that I hadn't been talking to my husband. I had been talking to some kind of other living being the whole time. The only memory I have after this is walking back down the hall toward my room. I do not remember getting into my bed or going to sleep. I just woke up in the morning with my book next to me on the comforter. This experience really stayed with me afterward, as I'm sure it would with most people. I also didn't dare tell anyone and kept it completely to myself, but as the days and weeks went on, something started happening to me. When I would be working in my garden, I would feel that same sense of connection to things, and it was very strong. I could put my hands on a plant or a tree, or even my bucket, and feel like I was part of it. Please do not think I'm some kind of hippie when I say that, because it's so far from who I am. This was totally new for me. It didn't stop with the garden either. There was a morning where I was at my table eating oatmeal and toast for breakfast, and I felt the same connection to the food. It was in the individual oats and the grains in the bread and even the juice I was drinking. It continued happening for months and got even stronger, like something was telling me I needed to go out of my way to take care of the world. It eventually led me to spending my time and money differently, and I joined a group that cleans up parks and roads, which was something I had never been involved in before. It's not like I didn't care about the environment before this happened. I know everyone does to some extent, but it was different, like a calling or a responsibility. I don't think what happened to me was in any way paranormal. I can't imagine my husband's spirit visiting me from the other side to chat about the environment, then turning into an alien before leaving. That doesn't make any sense. I also don't think it was a dream because of how real it was and how much it changed my life. The only thing that seems to fit is that I had an encounter with another life form. I don't know if it was from here or from somewhere totally different, but whatever it was, it gave me a clear message. We are connected to all of this, and we need to take care of it like it's irreplaceable. And that is exactly how I live my life now. This happened in May of 2009, the year my daughter was born, so my wife was 7 months pregnant at the time. We live in Overland Park, Kansas, and have been in the same house since 2003. Nothing happened in our house before this, and nothing has happened since. It took place over 4 consecutive nights, and during the first 3, I was waking up 4 to 5 times for absolutely no reason. Nothing was waking me like being hot or uncomfortable, and it wasn't because I had to use the bathroom. I would just open my eyes, and it was very weird for me because I'm usually a heavy sleeper with no history of insomnia or problems sleeping. Additionally, I was having extreme fatigue at work, and it wasn't a normal tiredness from losing sleep. My entire body was wiped out and dehydrated, and my legs had a deep soreness that went from my calves all the way up through my thighs and into my lower back. It felt like I had been doing days of hard physical labor, but I hadn't done anything that would cause that level of fatigue. I also thought about the possibility of a flu or similar virus, but I had no other symptoms. The 4th night happened to be a Friday, and my wife and I were in our bed with a movie on. She fell asleep 20 minutes into it while I stayed up, and just before it was over, I heard a thunderstorm moving in, so I opened our bedroom window to listen to it. When the movie ended, I turned everything off and went to sleep. I'm not sure what time it was, but I woke up in the dark again, exactly like the 3 previous nights, but with one difference. I was hearing a low rumbling outside that I assumed was the thunderstorm and probably the reason I had woken up. The window was still partially open, and after 10 or 15 seconds, I realized that the sound wasn't going away. It was constant and sounded like it was coming in waves, but I wasn't seeing any lightning flashes in our room. While this was happening, I was on my side facing my wife. She was on her back and still asleep with the blanket completely off of her body. It felt cold in our room, so I reached over to pull the blanket back onto her, and when I moved my arm, I felt something I have never felt before. Every movement I made while reaching over to her had no resistance. What I mean by that is it was like a weightlessness where I couldn't feel anything underneath me, around me, or touching my arm as I stretched it out. I pulled my arm back because of this feeling, and doing that started a momentum that made my whole body rotate like I was spinning on a rotisserie and I couldn't control it or stop. At the same time, I looked at my body and saw that I was also outside of the blankets, just like my wife. I reacted to this by trying to sit up, but the only thing I could do was pull my knees into my chest. I wasn't actually sitting up. Nothing was making sense, and I was still rotating toward the window. Then that rumbling sound got considerably louder, and it put a heavy pressure on my ears, so I covered them with my hands. My body had turned far enough toward the window that the ambient light coming in allowed me to see the end table, and when I did, the reality of what was going on hit me. My alarm clock and a magazine I'd been reading were suspended in the air, and they were about a foot above the top of the table, not touching anything. This was so confusing, but I finally understood what was happening. My wife and I were suspended in the air too, and that's why I hadn't been able to sit up or stop the rotation my body was stuck in. I got to a point where I was facing down and looking at the bed underneath me. Then it was total lights out. After that, I have no idea what happened. I wasn't awake or conscious again until morning. When I did wake up, there was bright sun coming in the window, and I heard a neighbor's lawnmower outside. I couldn't have been more relieved to see daylight, but at the same time, I hadn't forgotten a second of what happened. When I got out of bed, the soreness in my legs was even worse than the other days, so I took some Advil and got in the shower. I called my wife into the bathroom and told her everything I've just described, but somehow she didn't experience anything. She didn't hear or see a thing and didn't wake up at any point in the night. She only knew that we had started a movie. Currently, she does believe that I went through something, but is on the fence about what it was. I think she's 50-50 on whether something actually happened or I dreamt the whole thing. Luckily, a pretty convincing piece of evidence showed up after my shower that morning, and I'm glad it did because I was starting to think it had all been in my head. When I walked back into our bedroom to get dressed, I went to my side of the bed and found my alarm clock on its side. It was not upright. This is a big deal in my opinion because it's a larger old-school alarm clock that my parents got me when I was a kid. Some people might actually remember it too. It's a Sony Dream Machine and I still have it. There is no way that alarm clock accidentally fell onto its side because it's a large, heavy cube. To me, it proves that I wasn't dreaming, and I think it fell back down onto the table like that after being suspended in the air. The other reason my gut tells me this was real is that it all stopped after that fourth night. I completely stopped waking up at night, and the exhaustion and leg pain were gone within a few days. Nothing ever happened again. I don't know what we went through, but my wife and I, along with some of the objects around us, were lifted into the air as if Earth's gravity was turned off, and after that, who knows what could have taken place. I'm grateful my wife didn't wake up like I did, but it's hard not being able to talk to her about it on the same level. I guess more than anything, it just makes me feel alone in this experience. I had an unexplained loss of time on a bike trail with my wife, and I've always wondered what happened to us or if we were possibly abducted. I'll need to give a little background first because it plays a part in the story. When I was younger, I was heavily into fitness and did a lot of weight training and rock climbing. I was going as hard as I could for years until I messed up my shoulder and had to stop. It wasn't from one single injury, it was from overuse that caught up with me, and it was my rotator cuff specifically. I completely quit climbing because of it, and it was something that bothered me for a long time. I did some physical therapy to strengthen that shoulder, but it never got close to fully healing, and for years I just accepted the fact I had a permanent injury. I learned to live with it and knew what movements I could and couldn't do, mainly lifting my arm over my head. That was the worst. I also couldn't reach behind my back without pretty severe pain. Long story short, it wasn't going to get better without surgery, and I didn't want to go that route. Getting on to the actual story, in May 2016, my wife and I spent a few days bike touring around some of the best trails and roads in the Hudson Valley. Our first ride was on the O&W Rail Trail going from Accord to Kingston and back, and it was an incredibly nice, clear day. On one section of the trail, my wife was leading and about 20 feet ahead of me. We were just going past this 300-year-old grain mill that's on the other side of the creek when I randomly looked up through the trees for no other reason than it was nice out. When I did this, I had to do a double take because I saw something against the blue sky. There were 5 small circles grouped closely together that were somewhat hard to see because of their coloring. I stopped the minute I saw them, then yelled up to my wife for her to stop too. After staring at them for a minute, we both agreed that they looked like little reflective discs and maybe had the shape of a contact lens. It was weird though, because when you looked at them directly, they were hard to focus on, but if you moved your eyes just a hair to one side, they were much more visible. I don't know if that was some kind of optical effect from the sun, but it almost gave them a 2-dimensional quality, like they were being projected onto the sky. They didn't seem that high up either, maybe 100 feet above the tops of the trees if I had to guess, and almost directly above where we were stopped on the trail. They were also dead still and not moving in any direction. I set my bike on the ground and went down the trail on foot. I was really trying to get different angles so I could figure out what they were, but no matter where I stood, they didn't change. This whole thing only went on for a few minutes tops, and while I was actively watching them in the sky, all 5 discs got more and more transparent until they faded away and were gone. When I walked back over to my wife, she was sitting on the ground next to her bike with her head down, which I thought was a little odd. I said something to her about mylar balloons being caught in an air pocket, but she didn't really respond. Then I had to ask if she was okay, and she said she was fine. I watched her get back onto her feet and pick up her bike, but this stands out to me because she didn't seem like herself for a short period of time. When we finally started riding again, I noticed right away that she looked a little wobbly and unsteady. I yelled up to her again to see if she was okay and got another "yes, I'm fine," but it took her a few minutes to look normal again, and I really remember that. At the time, I didn't think too much about it, and we finished our ride to Kingston. When we got into town though, we realized it was later than it should have been by about an hour. Even though that's not a huge amount of time, we noticed it, and it couldn't have been from stopping because that had only been minutes long, under 10 for sure. The rest of our trip was perfectly fine. We did the other trails we wanted to do and had a good time. It wasn't until we were back home that I started to think a little more deeply about what had happened, and something else popped up that was incredible. I was in our garage moving a couple of boxes and hanging our bikes on the ceiling just a few days after our trip. I was using an 8-foot ladder to do this like I always do to accommodate my shoulder, and when I lifted my wife's bike up, something felt different. I had no pain. It was so noticeable that I came back down to the ground and was rotating my arm around. Normally, I would feel it immediately if I raised it too high, but there was nothing, and I mean no pain at all when it was fully extended above my head. I wasn't going to push too hard, but I did lift a smaller bin over my head from the ground and put it on the top shelf without a single shooting pain. I was honestly wondering what world I had teleported into where my shoulder didn't hurt. That pain had been with me for so many years, and I couldn't believe I wasn't feeling it. I'm sure anyone with chronic pain knows you get very familiar with it in the worst way. For it to suddenly be gone felt like a godsend. What's crazy is that I hadn't even been doing my stretches or exercises, and I wasn't on any meds when it happened. It just seemed to heal itself out of the blue. And if that weren't miraculous enough, it stayed that way. I have not had a single issue with my shoulder since we got home from that trip. Right now, I can use both arms the same as I could in my 20s. This was a huge life-changing deal for me, so I obviously spent a lot of time thinking about it and trying to figure out what could have made it get better. There was only one thing I did differently beyond our normal daily routine, and that was our bike trip. Since riding a bike couldn't possibly heal a decades-long rotator cuff injury, that left me with our short but very weird incident on the trail. It all kind of came together for me after that. We had not only seen something highly unusual above the trail, but I know we lost a small amount of time on our way to Kingston. My wife's actions also make me think something happened to us. She was definitely disoriented even though it only lasted a few minutes. I can't say what it was we saw, but when I reflect back on it, I find myself wondering if the 5 circles might have been part of a single larger thing. Maybe the rest of it was cloaked or not visible from the ground. I have to think it was something, though. If we did have an otherworldly encounter and don't remember, I would be okay with it. I have always believed there's other life out there, probably all over the place, so why wouldn't they be checking us out from time to time? The part that amazes me even more than that is the almost overnight healing I experienced. If we were abducted, even if it was only for a short time, I am fully convinced that they fixed me. I want to thank everyone for watching another episode of Skywatcher Stories. If you like hearing these personal experiences of strange sightings and alien encounters, please subscribe because I upload new episodes every week and it really helps the channel. Until next time, keep watching the skies.